Okay, so today we have the pleasure to have with us Claudio Sunkel. Claudio was born in Chile and he studied biology and genetics at the University of Sussex in UK, where he obtained his PhD in 1983. He was also a postdoc at the Imperial College later on. After he created the molecular genetics laboratory at the Centro de Citologia Experimental at the University of Porto in Portugal, and later participated in the creation of the Institute for Cell and Molecular Biology, where he was vice director and after that director. He was also the head of the project that resulted in the construction of the Instituto de Investigação e Inovação em Saúde (I3S), where EBMC is currently integrated. So thank you for being with us today here. Can you tell us in summary your research interest?
Okay, my personal research interests have always been associated with how cells divide, how they manage to create two cells that have equal DNA content. So the whole my whole career has been devoted to the study how cells make sure that when they divide, the right set of chromosomes go to one cell and then the right set of chromosomes go to the other. And it has a lot of basic biological implications, but it has a very interesting human implication because a significant number of the tumors are associated with imbalance in the number of chromosomes in the type of chromosomes they have. So the way the cells divide may be an interesting aspect to understand about tumor biology as well.
Very interesting. So how did you realize that you wanted to be a scientist?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, that goes back in time, many years. So when I was in Chile doing my schools, I was always interested in science in many different ways. But I wanted to study medicine. And the reason to study medicine, because I was interested in biology. It happens that my family had to leave Chile at a particular time, and I moved to the United Kingdom. And at the time, I had to apply to university in the United Kingdom, and then biology was a possibility. I didn't have to do medicine to do biology. And I found as soon as the first day I put a foot in the biology school, I realized that was what really moved me. Just to tell you a very short little story, on the second, so the year was divided into 3 trimesters. On the second trimester, I had my first course on genetics. And from that day on, I started to work in the lab of people doing genetics because I got so interested. I identified funny flies, and then the flies, they asked me whether I was interested in going to the lab once a week. So I went to the lab, and then every class that I had was I also asked the teachers whether I could go to the labs and work on them. So it was sort of natural for me continuing this sort of research career.
Very cool. And how did you get interested in cell divisions and all its components?
Well, cell division came later. I was very interested right at the beginning about development. So development, how organisms develop, and there was something that is very dear to the center of CAPD, because that's what they do. It's the study of animal development. Because at the time, what was called the genetic dissection of development was beginning. So the first genes that were identified that had to do with development were identified. Eventually, that gave the Nobel Prize to Nusland Voller, Erik Vicious, and can't remember his name, but come to me in a minute. American geneticist who discovered bithorax. And so it was sort of natural that I started working in that area. Development is a fantastic area. They were beginning to understand. And then in the back of the mind, I always had this question about cells. So development is made out of cells, and cells have to divide and proliferate to make tissues, and tissues are the ones that ended up making the organism. So I always thought that, there had to be a correlation between how cells divide and grow and how much they do it in order to construct the tissues. And when I finished my PhD, I had done my PhD on pure developmental genetics. Then there was a possibility of going to Imperial College to work with somebody who was interested in doing genetic dissection of cell division using Drosophila as a model. And because I had done Drosophila, I was in the perfect position to be sort of in the middle between the two. With one interesting caveat is that guy had just come from the States, and they were developing molecular biology. So he was just not interested in identifying genetic genes in genetic terms, but also clone them and study their regulation and what they encoded. So I also got into this vanwagon of molecular biology very, very early on.
Exactly. You were in the correct moment.
At the right time, at the right place.
Exactly. And you have a long and successful scientific career. Did you have a mentor or someone that supported you to get here?
Yes, I had lots of mentors. So I had, when I was an undergraduate, I had a mentor, which was an amazing guy who was a biologist, but also a philosopher, called Brian Goodwin. And I worked with him. He was one of the first people who doing mathematical biology. Then during my PhD, there was a guy called Robert Whittle with whom I did my PhD. He was a fantastic friend who taught me a lot. Then during my postdoc, I worked with David Glover, who was amazing, molecular biologist, visionary, but also a very generous person, because he allowed people to take their work with them after they do the postdoc. So when I moved out, I took the project with me. And then I had a few other mentors in Portugal who were people who were more of a sort of general attitude to science that were very interesting in my life.
Very, very interesting. And how did the science impact your life, right? You were saying that you are originally from Chile, you lived in the UK, now you're living in Portugal for the last 35 years.
It's interesting you ask these questions and younger people ask these questions. I tell you, I never thought about it. I just did what I was enjoying. And as long as I was enjoying what I was doing, I just kept doing it. Now people worry a lot about their careers or what is the next step that they had to do. I mean, at the time, I don't know if it was me, but I just never thought about it. I got into the UK, and I had because I hadn't done my school in the UK. I couldn't just come into the university, so they didn't know what to do with me. So they called me for an interview. So I went for an interview, and I got so well with the guy with the interview, and he said, "Okay, come to the university." Then when I was in the middle of my undergraduate course, I was doing extremely well, and people really liked me, and I got a grant. So I didn't have to pay external fees. Then when I finished my undergraduate, I got an invitation by this geneticist whether I wanted to do his PhD. He had a grant, and he said, "I'll give it to you." So, okay, I'll do a PhD with you. Great. Then I finished my PhD, and I went to a seminar to see somebody who had just come back from the States. It ended up being this David Glover, and he was showing the stuff that he was doing and cloning genes and so on and so forth. And I asked him whether we could have a talk and show my interest. And I went to see him, and he said, "Well, okay, I have a job for you. Do you want a job?" I said, "Okay, I'll go to London." So I went to London. And then a big decision took place, which was I was dating a Portuguese woman. And and during those 4 years, she was in Portugal and I was in London. So we were commuting all the time. But it ended up that my son was about to be born, and he was born in July, and I arrived in Portugal in middle of June. I mean, I had to. So, but I didn't really have a job. I mean, I had an offer in Portugal from the Cancer Institute to introduce molecular techniques. But they had nothing. They had no lab, they had nothing. And I said, okay, I'll go there. And very soon after I was there, like 3 months I was there, then I got an offer from the university. Do you want to come to university and teach and do research? I said, okay, I'll do that.
So you were open?
I was following my interest, what I was really enjoying. And the opportunities arose, and I just took the opportunities.
And it worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
so
then
far.
Of course, within the university, then you have to follow the career, you have to teach, you have to, you move up the scale by doing exams and different levels of applications to different, grades of the job and so on. But there was always something natural. It didn't come as something like, I'm going to plan for the next 5 years what I have to do. No. There was an opening for a project, you submitted your project, and
exactly. You were open and you worked out your path. So in your career, you dedicate a part of your life in the management of research centers, first IBMC and now with the I3S. How did that impact your life and career?
I mean, that's it grew from very early on. Why did it? I'm a very organized person. So when I started seeing other people managing the institute in a completely unprofessional fashion, I started to get upset and said, look, we are wasting money. We are throwing money away. Why don't we buy equipment together between different groups? Why don't we buy reagents together within different groups? We are just wasting our resources. And as it happens, once you do that, they tell you, oh, do you want to organize it? You say, okay, I'll do it. So you start doing it and things work, and then they ask you for more. And there's something that for me is, I prefer to spend the time than to see something not well done. I mean, I see something not well done, I said, why don't you do it a different way? This way it worked much better. Let's try it. So I assumed these positions. They impacted on my work, of course. They take time.
Exactly.
But they take time, but they save time. Because then you create conditions for, we had a lot of people coming into the institute because we created conditions for them to come. I mean, Fernando is one of them. We created conditions, he found the conditions for that, and he came and he flourished there. Many other people as well. And that then impacts on me, because if those people flourish, they help my research to flourish as well. They bring new technologies, new ideas, new concepts, and so on. So it's sort of like you give and take.
Exactly.
All the time.
Exactly. Another part of the management is to know the flaws of the system.
Yeah.
So what is your idea? I imagine Portugal and Spain, they have a similar situation that science is not treated as well as we would like. What do you think it could be like small things that could help science to be better treated in Portugal and in Spain? Maybe better Portugal's situation.
But my guess is that Spain is similar. It's extremely difficult. I mean, I've been involved with the agencies that manage science in Portugal for a long time, doing things for them, reviewing and working in different groups that support things. And the problem is the politicians. The politicians do not get it. They don't understand. First of all, the large majority of politicians have no training. They have never done science. They don't know what it means. They don't know what impact of science has in society. And the problem is that they have a horizon which is very short. So they are looking always at the next election, so whether they will be elected and so on. And the problem is that science is something that has a long-term implication. We looked at now back, you can probably think about what happens in Spain, but Portugal, it took 25 years. 25 years ago, or 35 years ago when I went to Portugal, there was nothing there. Zero, basically. And now Portugal is comparable to all the best countries in Europe. And what happened was that it was an investment over 25 years of funds for grants, for projects, for people that design the organization of the system, and eventually you build a system. And that system when it's mature, it begins to transfer its knowledge to society, and then you begin to get innovation, you begin to get value out of the system. But the problem that we have now is that people think that it's a question of I put money in science and then 2 years later I get innovation. It doesn't work like that. It's a different timeline. What can we do about it? Complain to your, I mean, now we have elections in Portugal, and one of the things that we will do is the institutes have already discussed this issue, and they have allocated. As you talk to that particular political party, you talk to the other one, just to make them aware about the need to for training, elevate the level of education of the population, because that's the only way there is an absolute correlation between the level of education and whether the society that you live, it's innovating society or not. And that's the bottom line.
Okay, so we come to the last question. Is there, now back to the science, is there any question that you would like to answer during your scientific career? Something left to answer?
Oh yeah, ooh, so many.
Or a big question that you think it would be really cool to
Well, I don't know if I will answer in the sense that my research will answer it, but one of the areas that we are very, very interested, and this is more an institutional project than an individual project, we really need to get closer understanding between the genotype. How does a genotype produces a phenotype? I think this is the fundamental question about biology these days. How does the system interpret the information that it contains in the genome, and then at the end it creates a phenotype that in vast majority of cases creates a normal organism, but occasionally goes wrong. And in understanding that, we will always begin to understand better what disease is all about and how disease actually happens. It could be a genetic cause, intrinsic, or it could be an environmental situation that in connection with the genetic context gives you that. Or it could be a predisposition that we don't understand. So how is the information contained within a genome that produces an organism?
Very cool. Well, you need to leave a legacy too, right? So when you retire and you're enjoying a beer under the sun, you start the questions and someone needs to
of course.
answer. So thank you so much for your time, Claudio.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.